Mute yourself, Misoon.
Hi, I'm an alcoholic. My name is Misoon. Thank you for having me in your meeting. You guys in Tennessee, right, Steve? Yeah. There's one. I'm a little uncomfortable about this Zoom meetings. You would think I should be used to it by now, but one of the greatest thing about it is that you could get to Tennessee in 5 minutes and be with you guys. And I seen Vivian like 3 times in the past 4 days on Zoom, which is a treat. We've been friends, I think, 18 years. I know Vivian, but so I don't want to. I hope you guys don't get disappointed. Highly recommended. I don't even know what that means, but anyway, by God's grace, program of Alcoholics Anonymous and sponsorship. I've been sober since January 27th, 1995. And for that, I am truly grateful. I have a home group. It's a Saturday night speaker group in Sarasota, Florida. It's open meeting. It's at 7:30. It's Saturday evening. So if you guys ever in Sarasota, if you ever get to travel again, I guess, you guys come visit us. Vivian actually spoke for us for our potluck event, which was a lot of fun. And I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. I have sponsees, and they sponsor other women. And so I'll just go to my story. I grew up in Seoul, Korea. My parents still live there in Seoul, Korea. I Skype with them every Saturday. Their health is not good, not doing very well, but it is what it's so hard to be so far. Anyway, my parents basically spent all their time, energy, and money trying to educate us. Education was very important to my parents. And I grew up with no religion, no God. We didn't even go to a Buddhist temple, for heaven's sakes. They said, there's no such a thing as God, and that's how I grew up. Anyway, my parents were very frustrated with me, both of them. I'm left-handed and I have dyslexia. Not that those things make you stupid, but they do in Korea. So my parents would get really frustrated and they'll take it out on me physically and verbally because compared to my sisters and my brother, I was doing very poor. My sisters and my brother were excellent students and they like have PhD in something today. I don't know. So it frustrated my parents, and they were and when I was young, I just didn't get things right away. I couldn't learn things right away, and I wasn't smart, so they told me I was stupid, and they used to get very physical with me. And as I was growing up, I was just like afraid of them, and I knew I wasn't smart, and I wasn't part of this family. I didn't want to be seen, and I don't want to be heard. And the reason I briefly mentioned about how I grew up is to say one most important thing, and that is none of these things made me an alcoholic. It has nothing to do with my parents did. It didn't do and didn't say how my sisters treated me. It has nothing to do with me being an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic only because when I take a drink, I get a special effect. Just like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talk about in Doctor's Opinion, that men and women essentially drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Well, I didn't just like it. I loved the effect produced by alcohol. And I loved it so much that I would eventually sell my soul little by little for those drinks. I had to violate every ounce of my spiritual being in order to get that drink because I had to drink no matter what. And when I was 15, my parents shipped me off to boarding school in North Carolina. There's somebody in here from North Carolina. Anyway, and I was, at the time, I was like 15. I didn't know anybody over there, but I was glad to leave home because I was in so much, fear living at home. So I was glad to be away. But then when I got to this school, I didn't know anyone, and I was so young, and I didn't know what was going on. And one of the biggest hurdle I had there is that I couldn't speak English. I didn't understand what teachers were saying. I didn't understand the assignments. I couldn't understand. I mean, I couldn't make friends. And I would watch these kids like in the cafeteria. They'll pick up their tray and move away from me because they knew that I couldn't talk. And so I had this different kind of this like loneliness and sad, and I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know how I was going to survive that kind of situation. But just like any other high school, they always have this group of kids. They like hang out in the back of the room or something, and there were a group of kids that sat in the back of the cafeteria every day. In a round table, and one kid dressed all in black, another one had this pink mohawk, and another one dressed like Judd Nelson in Breakfast Club, and they were listening to things like The Clash and the Sex Pistols, and I didn't know what they were singing about, and I just remember being really loud, and they'll sit back there and smoke cigarettes. And I tell you, these are the first group of kids didn't pick up their tray and move away when I came by with my tray. They let me sit at the table, and they let me eat lunch with them, and they let me eat dinner with them. I don't know if they were too stoned to notice me, but I didn't care because they let me hang. So I did what they did. They taught me how to smoke cigarettes, and I would just follow them. We ate together for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I just did everything they did. And I started dressing like them. I had never mind. I had this really funny hairdo, but anyway, I'm going to go there. But so one Friday, they were super excited about something, and the only thing I understood was no lunch, no dinner. So I said, okay, I'm not going to eat lunch, I'm not going to eat dinner. And what they did is they went across the campus, snuck into a college dorm. This was back in the day when North Carolina drinking age was 18. And so they snuck into a college dorm. They bribed some of those kids, and they got some liquor and funny cigarettes, and we went off to party. And that will be the first time I ever took a drink. And when they hand me this beer, it was cold to the touch. And as soon as it got to my hand, I don't know where I got this idea or where I heard this information, because I never saw anybody drink in my family. My parents never touched a drop. I wish they had. They were a little uptight, but they never drank. So nobody really taught me how to drink, and that would be the first time I took. But when it got to my hand, I instinctively knew I'm supposed to chug it. I'm not supposed to sip it. And so I chugged the whole thing. And I probably had a second one, but I had this sensation, like this tingly feeling, like my whole body changed all the way down to fingertips. And apparently when I was drunk, I spoke English. So I am talking with the kids, I'm cracking jokes. I became like the funniest person in the whole group. And I'm singing along to all the Sex Pistol songs. I knew the every word. And it was like magic. And I just knew from that day on that I had to drink no matter what, and I had to drink every day. And it's kind of hard to get liquor when you're underage, but first time I took a drink, I don't know how many I had. It's like I have no control about the amount I take, just like the big books say. And I passed out, and I sprained my ankle. I fall into poison ivy ditch, but those things don't matter. That's what alcohol does to me. But what alcohol does for me is far greater than what happens to me when I drink. So I'll have to drink no matter what. And so I got in a little trouble when I was in high school and for drinking underage and all that stuff. But that's how I spent my high school. I remember sitting in the classroom just obsessed on how am I going to get the alcohol, who am I going to get it from, and who am I going to bribe, and blah, 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 and planning all these things. And after high school, I went off to college in New York, um, where my partying continued. I became this like party person. And it was back in the 80s when the club kid thing was in, and that's what I was doing. I would go to all these clubs every night, and I would go to after hour club. I would go to after hour club, and I walk out of club at 9 o'clock in the morning and trying to get to my painting classes and all that stuff. And this is I basically drank every day when I was in college. There wasn't a day that I missed. And this is when I started to have blackouts. I remember going to a club, and then I come to in another club in a bathroom with no shoes. I'll come to in a taxi cab, and I don't know how I got there. I'll come to in somebody else's bedroom, and I don't know who it is. I don't know where it is. And I'll come to 2 in the morning and down Lower East Side, looking for next drink. And these things started to happen. But those things really didn't bother me because I was having so much fun. And after college, I was able to get a job in a art world where I got to travel all over the United States and all over Europe installing contemporary art. If there was a gallery, I was installing it. If there was a museum, I was installing it. And they'll pay my way for 2-3 weeks at a time to go install and make sure that everything is done for the opening. And I got to travel all kinds of places, and it was a great job. And every time I read the Bill story when he talks about I have arrived, I felt like that when I was doing this job. I was in a museum catalog, and I was interviewed by BBC when I was in London installing artwork and stuff like that. And I really thought I have arrived. And everybody was envious of my job. And this is around the time people starting to nag me about my drinking, which is kind of annoying. So when you don't think you have a problem and people tell you like, oh my God, how could you drink again after that? Why are you drinking? It's early in the morning. Why you drink so much? You missed the work again because of this, and they will say, you probably have a drinking problem. And it was just going on and on and on. And it gets quite annoying. So what I did is I decided to quit that job so I could drink around the clock and I don't have to hear people nag about my drinking. And what happened was when you don't work, you don't get paid. I didn't think about that when I quit my job. So I got this little part-time job, was really barely footing the bill, but when you're drinking, it's even worse. So now this is when I started to go against all my ethical, moral codes. I had to lie to you in order to get that drink. I had to steal from you in order to get that drink. I had to cheat in order to get that drink. My friend Sharon in California talks about how she would slide her dignity across the bar for another drink. And those are the kind of things I start doing. And those days, those things that became normal thing. And I heard my sponsor say one time in a conference, and she said, when men walk through doors of AA, they hated what they have done. And when women walk through doors of AA, they hated who they become. And I'm not sure if that's true, but I could tell you this. For me, when I walked through doors of AA 25 years ago, I hated what I had done, and I hated who I'd become. That pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. Nobody had to explain that to me. I knew it. I knew it. So I was living by myself up at Upper East Side in New York, and the winter of '94 came around, and by this time I had no friendly direction. I didn't even have anybody who would drink with me who I thought that drank more than I did. They were completely disgusted with me. They said, don't call me, don't show up. I would say to them when they were nagging me about my drinking, and I said, hey, you don't understand, just leave me alone. And they eventually all did, left me alone. And so I'm drinking by myself in my apartment. And by this time, I sold everything in the apartment, including furniture. They weren't mine, but I sold them anyway. And and that's how, I mean, day to day, this is what I'm doing. And one winter day, I was sitting in my apartment, and I don't know why this day was different, because to me, from outside looking in, it looked the same to me. I'm drinking, I'm taking pills and doing powder. I mean, just doing everything to basically oblivion. And I was sitting there, and I see a lamp on this side and 3 garbage cans full of my own vomit on this side. And this thought comes to my mind, and it said to me, I don't want to be drunk. I don't want to be sober. I just want to check out. And that line in the vision for you where it talks about that, well, a lot of us just sit around and talk about high bottom, low bottom. I don't know what that is. And to me, everybody has the same bottom, and that is that when it comes a time when alcoholic cannot imagine life without alcohol, we're jumping off place, we wish for the end. I mean, if alcoholic cannot imagine life with alcohol, that is, I don't know what that is, but a bottom, a jumping off place. So I thought maybe I shoot myself, but I didn't know where to get a gun in New York. And then I thought, oh, maybe I could jump off the bridge. There are lots of bridges in New York, but it's kind of cold in New York in January. So I thought, no, I'm not going outside. So forget that. And then I remember a couple of my friends who died of overdose a few months back. And I thought, I could probably do that. So I had a little bit of vodka left. So I drank that, and I took everything I had. I don't even know what I had, but I tell you that when I went to detox, my test thing was like 2 pages long. But anyway, so when I came to, after I did that, there was a knock on the door, and my sister was standing there. And what she did was she lived in Jacksonville, Florida. And she flew from Jacksonville to New York City and standing at my door. And if I closed my eyes, I could still see her face, which was a lot of anger, a lot of fear, and a lot of disgust. And I wish to never see that look ever again in her. But she said, what were you doing last night? So I told her that I was trying to kill myself. And she said, well, how are you going to do that? So I told her that I took everything. I drank the vodka, and I took everything I had. And she looked at me with so much disgust. And she said, I wish you'd have taken more, because she'd rather see me dead than the way I looked that day. And we put the stuff, I had a fit in this little duffel bag. And we went to the airport, and we flew down to Jacksonville, and she put me straight to detox. And what happened was that I found out later, she's been going to Al-Anon meetings in Jacksonville, Florida, every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And she found out about the 12-step program. She found out about AA. She found out about detox. Because that's a first time for her. She didn't know anything about any of that stuff. But she found out all that stuff from going to Al-Anon meetings. And the reason she found Al-Anon meetings is because her therapist happened to be a board member at one of the halfway houses in Jacksonville, Florida. So I know that my spiritual path was already planned. And I didn't even believe in God when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. So she put me to detox, and she says, she gave me some coins, and she said, you call me every day from detox. I said, okay. So I called her next day, if any young people here, you might have to Google it. They had a payphone that's attached to the wall, and then you put like quarters in to make a phone call. Anyway, so I called her the next day, and it was her birthday. And I don't even remember saying this. I don't know if I remember it was her birthday, and I didn't care because I was so self-absorbed. And I was just mad that she put me to detox. And so it was her birthday, and I don't remember it. And apparently I cussed her out over the phone. And I found out later that my sister is a cellist in the orchestra, and she'd been saving money to buy a cello bow, and she spent that money to get me from New York to Jacksonville and put me to detox. And she was basically trying to save my life, and I cussed at her. And that is a person I became, and I don't know what that did to her to this day. And I spent 10 days at this detox, and every day at 8 o'clock, this happy AA people come, and they will hold AA meetings. And I didn't go to any of them because I wasn't an alcoholic. Uh, so they said, the detox people said, hey, if you're not going to any of these meetings, we're not going to let you out. And I thought, oh my God, that is not good. So I went to one of these meetings, and it was Friday night, and two people from outside AA came. Her name was Deb, and the guy name was Jerry, and I had no clue what they talked about. I couldn't care less. I wasn't listening. I couldn't care less what they have to say. And I just sat in the back and waiting for the meeting to be over. And what happened was a woman who came there and came and talked to me after the meeting, which is usually not allowed. When you go to detox to health meetings, you got to leave right away. You can't hang out with the patients there. But I don't know how that happened that night. Obviously, there's a higher power working there, but at the time I didn't know. But she was super excited. She was very animated. She was loud, and she was just happy, and she was going on and on and on and on and on talking to me. And I was kind of annoyed because I'm detoxing, I'm shaking, and she's like, ah. But I remember two things she said to me to this day. She said, AA works and God loves you. And I know why I remember those two things to this day. At the time, I wanted to hit her, and but I was all out of energy at the time. And she gave me her phone number, and she said, call me when you get out. And Sunday came, and my sister came and picked me up. I had no place to go. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money, so I had to go live with my sister. And I called that woman the same day I came out of detox, and I said, and she was so excited. She said, oh my God, I can't believe you called. Nobody ever calls me from detox. And she said, we'll go to AA meeting. And I'm like, oh my God. So since I had nothing to do, nowhere else to go, she took me to my first AA meeting. And Jacksonville, area-wise, is like the largest in the nation. And so I don't know who orchestrated this stuff. I don't know how to drive because I lived in New York. I didn't have a car. But my sister happened to be living in a place where one of the AA clubs was walking distance. So I will walk there every day. I walk there 3 times a day to a meeting there every day, my first year. And I know that God had walked me to every one of those meetings. But when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wasn't a happy newcomer that fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous and the fellowship and the people. I just did not like Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't like the people. I didn't like things on the wall. And my God, I let them know it too. Um, I was known as the hostile newcomer. Um, and people say to me, you must be new. What is your name? And I'll say things like, hey, this is an anonymous program. You don't have to know my name. I don't have to know yours. And this hug thing really annoyed me. And they'll try to give me a hug. And I say, I don't need a hug. And they'll say things like, well, what if I need one? And I'll say, don't be so needy. Back off, kind of thing. And I would not say I'm an alcoholic. I was disrupted. I was angry. I was just horrible, horrible to those people. And there was a guy that was there every day, and he got tired of me coming in and destructive and angry and telling everybody to F off. And so he said one day, he said, hey, you know, you just behave so bad in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you can't even say you're an alcoholic. And I don't care if you stay or if you go, but I just wanted to know if you thought that AA stand for Angry Asian. And I just thought that was kind of rude. But anyway, and they actually had a group concert. I couldn't say I was an alcoholic. 9 months of sobriety, hanging out in AA is the first time I would say I was an alcoholic. So first 9 months, I was just a wreck. I was a train wreck. I was just, and they had a group conscience, and they didn't know what to do with me. It's like, well, what if she's in the wrong room? Well, she shouldn't hang out here. She can't even say she's an alcoholic. What are we going to do with it, kind of thing? And they were trying to basically say, well, she could maybe come to meetings, but she can't hang out in a club, kind of thing. And that's how it was going, the group, that business meeting. I wasn't there. I heard about it much, much later. And this old timer raised his hand. His name is Bill Jones. He's passed away. But he said, hey, she's staying sober with us, and maybe God sent her here, and we should take care of her. And thank God for concepts and minority opinion changed the vote, and I got to stay. And that woman who came to detox became my sponsor temporarily, and she was kind of annoying. So I thought, I should just get rid of her. I don't know why we think we could fire sponsors, but I guess we do it. So I told her, I said, hey, I don't think this is working out, so I'm going to get another sponsor. And she said, thank God, my prayer's been answered. So I got another sponsor, and her name was Mary Frances, and she's the one who took me through the steps. And I never forget the time I did step 5 with her, because I had to tell her all the things I'd done by selling my soul. I had to tell her about the person I became and things I'd done. And after I was done, she came around and she gave me a hug, and she told me she loved me. And at the time, I could not understand how anybody could love somebody that was on that piece of paper. But I believed her. And when I was 7 years sober, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she was given 6 months to live. And that was the most difficult time in my sobriety, not because part of it was because she was dying, but I was also in so much anger at the time. My resentment list was actually longer than the first one I came with. And my parents would be on the top of the list for the first 7 years. And I did what you guys said. Be the best daughter you could be the, all that stuff. And I did the action part. But every time they call me or I get to talk to them, I'll be up till 3 a.m. and thinking about how much I hated them. And I tell you what happened was, when I was 6 months sober, my mom wanted to come and see me. So she flew half around the world all by herself and came to see me. And not only that, she wanted to see where I was going to meetings, and she wanted to meet my sponsor. So I take her to this smoky AA club. And we used to smoke in AA, like there, all the shades with the traditions and steps were like brown because people smoke all day. And I take her to this clubhouse in a parking lot. She sees my sponsor and she starts walking over to her. And I was just standing next to her, but I had quite a distance because I wasn't so happy that my mom wanted to do this. And she goes over to my sponsor and she hugs her, and I overhear her. I mean, she starts sobbing, my mom, and I overhear her say, "Thank you for saving my daughter's life," to my sponsor. At the moment I heard it, this rage just shot through my whole body. I was paralyzed for a few seconds. And the only thought that came to my head was, you trying to care about me now is just a little too late, that you are a sorry example of a mother. That is all I had with 6 months sobriety. And because I would not and I could not, that resentment lasts me next 7 years in my sobriety in AA life, where I basically end up in a hotel room in a fetal position at 3 a.m. thinking, I don't want to be drunk. I don't want to be sober. I just want to check out. And I think the only reason I didn't drink that time and I didn't check out is because I felt I had a responsibility to take care of my sponsor who was dying. Her hair's falling out and she's sick and she had oxygen tank. And as sick as she was, she still wanted to go to these AA meetings. And at times I'll be resentful at her for making me take her to these stupid AA meetings. But I did. And I do believe today that as she was dying, she was saving my life. And after she passed, I was invited to go to a women's retreat called Ladybug Retreat, which was a miracle in itself because I wouldn't even go to women's meeting for an hour. And I remember saying to somebody, I was like, oh my God, I have to be with this woman for whole 3 days, whole weekend. What am I going to do? And so I went, and back at the time, it was in Rincon, Georgia. Anyway, so I go to this women's retreat, and Polly P. and Michael E. were doing the workshop and telling their stories. And one of the when they were doing the workshop with the steps, this woman got up on the podium, and she was don't you know it? First, her first resentment, her mom, and so Polly is taking her through the steps, and I heard Polly say, "How did your mother grow up to this woman?" And that hit me, like right here. I didn't just hear it here, like my heart heard it. And when Michael was sharing, I hear her say, before I tell you about my childhood, let me tell you about my mother's. And that hit me. And then I remember that line in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and says that perhaps these people are spiritually sick, but it also says like us. So they're like me. And that I get to put myself in their shoes. And how did they grow up? How did it been like for them? How were they? And how were their parents? And I start thinking about my parents and how they grew up. My mom was abused very badly, and my dad, his dad will disappear, and he had like 9 siblings. His mom, who could not read or write, would have to go house to house and do the house chores and beg for a bag of rice to feed these kids, and 3 of them had to die from hunger and neglect. And when I start thinking about those things, what I start to understand, not just read about it, and understand in my heart that St. Francis prayer, where I started to understand them before I was understood, and I started to love them before I was loved, and I just started to comfort them before I was comforted. And I met my husband around that time when I was 7 years old. But to this day, he says, I went to that Ladybug retreat as this person and came back as someone else. And I'll never forget it. And through that work, my resentment was gone. And a few years later, I got to visit my parents in Korea, and it was like 2009, around there. And I haven't been home for a really, really long time. And one of the last days I was there, my mom was sitting on the floor doing laundry, and she just looked really tired, and she looked so old. And I was rubbing her back, and I thought about her childhood again, and I thought about her adulthood, because I watched my mother, who could not shed a single tear when her father died, when her mother died, when her only sibling died. But she saw for me when I was 6 months sober in front of that smoky AA club. And I said to her, Mom, you look so tired. And she turned around, she took my hand, and she said, um, I'm not proud of a lot of things I've done in my life, but what I regret the most is how I treated you. And the moment she said that, I knew I was forgiven for things I'd done and forgiven for the person I became through alcoholism. And that's my soul that I sold for all those drinks. It was as if a little piece of it came back. Now, my sister was hard to make amends. I don't know. She was always trying to kill me for some reason. And first few years, I tried to make amends to her. Excuse me. She had a list of things I'd done to her since I was 5 years old. And I figured this is not going good. So I followed my sponsor said, just be the best sister you could be. Pick up her laundry. You pick up a grocery, cook something for her, do what you can. And over the years, that relationship slowly changed. And she is a huge fan of Alcoholics Anonymous. She thinks everybody should go to Alcoholics Anonymous. She said, they make a human being out of people. And today she calls me on her birthday to wish me happy AA anniversary for me. And all that stuff I owe to Alcoholics Anonymous and God and what you guys have told me. And like my parents had no idea I resented them for all those years because my action says something else. So I didn't have to re-hurt them in order to make that amend. And I'm so grateful for that. And as my friend Bob always talks about how nothing's wasted in fourth dimension, that our dark past is the greatest asset we have. And God wasn't done. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I get to sponsor this girl, and we have a similar background, and that is not why I sponsor her. Nobody would sponsor her. So I'm the one who said yes. And I met her in Jacksonville. I started to sponsor her, and I was still living there. And then she had to move to Miami for work. She moves there, and then she started complaining about how Miami people don't know how to do AA. I don't know why we do these things. We get sober somewhere. Like Jacksonville has a special spot in my heart because I got sober there, and I was in the AA for 20 years there before I moved to Sarasota. And every time we move somewhere, we're like, they're not doing that right. I don't know why we do this. Maybe you guys don't, but I did, and she did. So she was complaining all the time. So I said, stop complaining and do something about it. So she decided her own conference. Not that we're grandiose or nothing. She was only a year sober. So she started her own conference. And the first year she had it, I went to see her to support. And both of her parents were there. And that would be the first time I'm meeting them. And Saturday, during the banquet thing, I see her mom, and she starts walking over to me slowly, and I see the tears running down her face. And she comes over and she gives me a hug, like a really long hug. And she said, "Thank you for saving my daughter's life." The exact same thing my mom said to my sponsor, who is even with us anymore. And God gave me an opportunity for me to see in her eyes that I would not and I could not see when I was 6 months sober. And that is the unconditional love a parent has for their child. And I don't know what that is if that is not one of the great events that come to pass for me. And so I just got to keep doing this thing because I don't know what I'm going to be missing if I'm not. And I have a friend out in California. His name is Carl. And he always talks about his kids, how much he loves his kids, and he will die for them, he'll take a bullet for them. And I don't know how that is uh, because I don't know I don't have kids. I don't have kids. Uh, but he talks about that all the time, and he never felt love like that in his life. But he also says that he's an alcoholic, that he will never trade them for first drink. He would for the second one. And when I hear that, for me, that I consider to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. So although today I would not sell my soul for the first drink, I would for the second one, just like that. So I want to thank you guys for being here, and I want to thank you for saving me a seat that had my soul attached to it. Good night.